Hi, everyone, and welcome to another exciting adventure in words, images, and worlds. I am joined on this episode by the very talented Rose Bousamra. Rose, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jason. I am so excited to talk comics and yeah, please share a bit about my process and my work.
Great, great. I appreciate your work so much. As I've said to other folks on the show, I'd only invite people whose work I enjoy and I admire, and I want to amplify it in any way that I can. Also, loving the t-shirt, I have to say.
Oh, thank
Uh,
you. Yeah, from Books Are Magic in Brooklyn. Got to go there on tour last year.
Very cool, very cool. So you're probably best known currently in the market as being the illustrator on an absolutely beautiful book called Frizzy. And I know you have a couple of other pieces, at least one other book on the way that we'll make sure to talk about. Before we get into the titles, I always ask, what are those things that linked you to writing, creating, in the world of comics?
Yeah, so it started very, very early for me. I've always been drawing ever since I could remember. It was always like as a really, really shy kid, my way of communicating with the world, without feeling that rush of anxiety every time an adult came to talk to me. Instead, I could show them a picture of what I was drawing and have an exchange that was more comfortable. So yeah, watching movies like manga. I was a huge fan of Clamp. So like everything visual storytelling was like I needed to get my hands on. The only thing I didn't have a lot of access to books like at all as a kid, and I had so much free time and was always going between like different family members' houses. So I didn't have a ton of stability either. So drawing was just the one thing I could like make my own worlds and make my own stories and my own characters that I could like talk with in my mind and imaginary characters and worlds. And it was just so like therapeutic to me. And it continues to be. So yeah, I just have always been attracted to any kind of storytelling. It is such a great like form of self-expression for me. I don't think I could live without it, to be honest. I don't know how people do it.
I'm totally with you on that. During the pandemic, throughout the pandemic, I've gone to poetry, I've done sketching. So I love that idea of continuing to craft professionally, uh, but also for the inner person and processing life personally. I was also a shy kid. So look at us out here doing podcasts, and I'll probably put this on YouTube as well, so long as you're okay with that. I mean, out there, sharing with the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the big reasons I love to do talks and panels or whatever is because I never saw anyone out there who was like queer and a person of color, talking about doing this as a living. It was not until I was, I think, 26 that I even considered doing this as an actual career. So yeah,
Mhm.
I maybe could save some kids some time. And
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's the power of story, and I appreciate that aspect of the work as well, and the work that you do.
well, thanks.
Um, I tend to follow things that First Second publishes. I don't read everything they publish, but I know that they publish really interesting work. And so immediately when I saw Frizzy, of course, the name Claribel Ortega stands out to me. But then I thought, well, this is wonderful. It's this graphic novel for people that haven't read it. It is really worth the visit, worth sharing in classrooms and excuse me, homes and libraries and anywhere where fine books are enjoyed, which should be everywhere. So what was the vision, the sort of take that you wanted to bring to this collaboration?
Yeah, so that was just completely out of the blue. I got an email from Claribel, or not from Claribel, from Kiara Valdez, our editor, who is so excellent. And she was like, I'm from First Second. Do you want to do a graphic novel about a Dominican American girl who learns to love her hair? And I was at the time like so ready to make a graphic novel. And I was so excited because, again, I pretty much read everything First Second comes out with, even before I ever considered going into that field. So the fact that she was from First Second and, had this great idea, I was like, oh my gosh, this is fate. But I also, I'm not Dominican American. I'm actually Arab American. And I asked why me?
Mm.
And she was like, well, your art is so full of life and your characters and your hair, like the way you draw hair is fantastic. And my heart like melted so much at that because I have a lot of privilege. I'm light skinned. I have straight hair. So I, as an artist, have taken a lot of time and dedication, as I feel like all artists should, to depict all kinds of humans. And humans have all kinds of hair, all kinds of skin tones, all kinds of facial features. So I feel like all my work just leading up to that was like really prepared me. And then, Claribel Ortega, yes, she is absolutely fantastic. I looked up her work when I got the
Mm.
initial email, and I was like, oh, she's like a really cool person. She loves fantasy.
Mm.
She has a series Witchlings, which is middle grade and absolutely awesome. And I just knew that this was a person that, like, even before I read the script, I was like, well, I know I can vibe with this person. They seem like an amazing creator and is like very dedicated. And then I read the script and I was like, oh my gosh, it is so heartfelt. It is so sincere and emotional. And I love working, if there's anything I love working on across all of my projects, it's like deeply moving, emotional moments. And that is
Mm.
like all of Frizzy. It's like her conflict, dealing with her family. And, just briefly for people who haven't read it yet, it is about Marlene, who she loves her natural curls, but she is constantly being told from the outside world and from her family that she needs to straighten her hair in order to look pretty. But she's like, no, that can't be true. So she takes matters into her own hands and tries to tame her curls, and it goes wrong, and she gets bullied and gets in trouble at school, and it's a whole emotional journey until she finally gets to talk to her Tia Ruby, who was very cool, very in the know about hair, and kind of lays it down for her. And yeah, so there's a lot of talk in the book about racism and internalized racism, which is like definitely something I dealt with my family as well growing up. So I was actually very surprised when I read through the script, and even not being Dominican American, like there was so many feelings I could identify with, the alienation of like feeling like, oh, just the way I was born, like something about it doesn't fit into society, or someone's gonna, say that something's wrong with me for something that's completely outside of my control. And yeah, so I just like really I felt that was really special, a really, really special story to tell. And I was so honored to like be part of it, and that it's, my art has helped it reach like such heights, and that it's like so many people are identifying with it.
Mm.
Yeah, and I just had like the absolute best time working on it. Claribel Ortega is just an amazing storyteller, like fantastic.
Agreed.
The script actually, like, she had never written a graphic novel before, so it was her first graphic novel, and it was fantastic. The script, like, there was nothing in it that I had to go to her and be like, hey, like, this doesn't make sense for a comic or visually. Like, there was nothing. Like, I was like, this is amazing. I just have to figure out, the visual pacing. Like, that was the biggest challenge for me. Because I've never done anything 214 pages long.
Right.
So you'd learn a lot, like how to thumbnail.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first time ever thumbnailing a story. And yeah, it was like incredible. Like, just we had a lot of good back and forth, like a lot of rapport with Kiara and Clarabelle. So like every step of the way, they were like checking my work and like encouraging me, and like they were really like my biggest cheerleaders through it all, because like I didn't know a lot about publishing. Even like I was so new to like the whole world of making books and all of that, the whole process. And they were just absolutely the best through it all. Um, yeah, they really just were very kind, and their creative eye like definitely made the book like what it is. Um, yeah, I think
Yeah,
everyone should read it.
sorry.
I think everyone should read it. It's,
I,
it's very heartfelt. It's funny. Yeah, I had a lot of fun working on it.
I agree. Everyone should absolutely read it. It's a beautiful book. And I love what you said there about the places the story goes. those issues and life experiences that people need insight into and need to process and think about. And I also love that there are more books, more and more books, and still not enough, but more and more books published that add to bookshelves and that aren't just from folks who are white or male or cis or hetero. When I look back at the books I started teaching initially as an educator, it was not a very um, heterogeneous group. And so I'm really, really glad that there are more and more books like that, and they absolutely should be shared and need to be shared.
Yeah, that's it's interesting you say that because when I was first starting my comic journey and even just starting to read more comics, like through college, I was studying fashion design and I hated it, but I was really trying to get through it. I
Hmm.
was really committed. I really like to follow through with everything I do. So I was like, I'm going to get that degree and figure it out after. But boy, I just wanted to be anywhere else. So I started reading comics. I started drawing more. I started drawing comics and engaging with them more only because I started to see more people of color, more characters of color on covers. Just there was so much more variety starting to come out. At that time. So it was only, yeah, then about like 10 years ago, I realized like, oh, wait, it's not only white men who make comics. That's
Right.
really fantastic. So yeah,
And how powerful for future students, future readers and writers to see Frizzy and to see other books out there to say, oh yeah, I can absolutely step up and do that too and share with the world.
yeah, absolutely. And especially working in kids media, they get to have those lessons for life. They get to carry those forever. Yeah, that's why it's Frizzy especially was like such a nice like opportunity for me because it was nothing I expected to be working on. I really wanted to do like epic YA fantasy, like,
Hmm.
that kind of deal, like gory sci-fi, whatever. But that's why I had to ask why me for Frizzy because I was like, I've never even drawn like kids really. But man, it was so fun. And, especially going on tour and meeting all the readers and, hearing their questions, both hilarious and like serious artist questions like they're just little people just trying to figure out the world just like us and um yeah, it's been an honor making kids stuff, honestly.
Very much needed and lovely work. Can I ask about your process? I can't remember if that was on my list I sent you, but would love to hear a little bit about your process as well.
Sure. So I am mostly an illustrator. So most of the projects I've worked on so far have been someone hands me a script, like with Frizzy, and I will do thumbnails. So just very tiny versions of the pencil pages.
Hmm.
Um, and then I'll just do rough sketches with pencils. And I always work on Clip Studio. I just don't have the time to be erasing and going through paper. Although I do love drawing on paper. Yeah, all my projects so far have been digital. And then inking, which is my absolute favorite part. And then yeah, coloring. So I do it all myself. I haven't yet worked with a team yet. That's on my list for sure. But yeah, and then writing is much, much more complicated for me. Like with drawing, ever since I started writing, I've almost like realized how much I prefer drawing. Even though writing and creating the story is the fun part for me, sitting down and writing the dialogue is absolute torture. Um, though I love it. Like I'm gonna keep making stories and writing. But gosh, it's really more of like you have to really dig into your heart and your brain and your soul and really like just focus and try to think of, what is the story I want to tell? What are these characters thinking? What are their inner lives like? There's just so much more that you have to consider with writing, but it's been amazing so far. And with Gutless, it has worked out so that I actually started writing the script, just words on paper, kind of like a movie script style. And then I kept rewriting. I could not go on. So I just started drawing thumbnails. So I learned that I just am an artist who has to work with thumbnails when I write.
Yeah.
It's just I have to do visual and um, the words at the same time. And it really worked out well though, because now I have such a solid idea of what it's going to look like, and like where the movement goes, like through the pages. And um, so yeah, that was a big help for this process. But I am, still so new. So I'm learning everything on each project, for the first time. And even then, every creative project, every person is different, every team is different.
Mhm.
Every publisher is different. So there's different things they might want to see. Um, but yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
I was talking with Olivia Stevens yesterday, and Olivia mentioned that inking is also the favorite part of the process. And so that's something that I also enjoy doing, though I'm not professional about it. I love bringing the that part of the page out.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and love hearing about the process and the steps that you go through. So you mentioned Gutless. There was another point there that I was going to mention that you said that I really liked. I'll bring it back around if it comes to me. But so tell us a little bit about Gutless. Anything else that you'd like to share and promo, you're absolutely welcome to, but curious about the next steps in your creating.
For sure. I am so excited about Gutless. It's something that I came up with probably 7 years ago. So it was out of college. I mentioned I had started reading comics. I kind of started making comics just for fun. And it was the idea I came up with when I was like not thinking about an audience, not thinking about even like um, just not thinking about selling it in any way. Just like, what would I make if it was just my heart, my story? No one's going to read it.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
it'll just be something fun for me to work on and get better at comics. Um, and it started out as a webcomic, but boy, it's very difficult when you are working a job, sometimes two jobs, out of college. You have debt and no money, and no one's paying you to make these comics, which take a very, very long time to do. And then as a webcomic artist, of course, you're promoting it, you're hosting your own website. Like there's so many things. So I think I only got 10 pages out before I was like, okay, everyone, I'm sorry. I just have to wait and, maybe someday it'll be something when I have time. But it was just something I never forgot. I never forgot about it. The characters, I kept drawing them. I just kept thinking about their story, and there was something in it that I just really wanted to develop. And it wasn't until Kiara, gave me the opportunity for Frizzy, that she was like, well, you will have an opportunity to pitch something to us as well. It was kind of part of the deal, and that happens a lot. But I didn't know if it was good enough at all. And I am very thankful for my agent, Tamara Kawar. She's excellent. And she looked it over and was like, you definitely have something here. Like this can be something. And so to have someone who like does this for a living just tell me, yes, like it's good. It's a good enough idea to at least try and develop and pitch. So I was like, you know what? Okay, that's all I need. So I um, just pitched it to for a second and they absolutely loved it. And so basically it started off as my love for AI stories, so artificial intelligence, but not sci-fi. So like Frankenstein technically is artificial intelligence story. Pinocchio, like any kind of story that had to do with like the question of humanity or what it means to be human, which is like very identifiable for me, especially growing up, like I said, queer, mixed race, neurodivergent. Like you have a lot of feelings of alienation and not fitting in. And I was like really into like how that translated into fantasy settings and like how I could kind of tell that story. And yeah, just I was always so inspired by like Miyazaki movies growing up and Disney, of course. So like fantasy is like really my realm, like where I like to live.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It just started with Milo, who is a wooden knight who is brought to life by a witch princess, and they live this like very isolated life in this tree where all these, witches practice they practice this amazing like flower magic, and it seems great, but it turns out that this magic is like kind of messed up and it's like affecting the world, and they
Mm.
kind of like have to break free of this life they've always known and try to venture out into the unknown. And Milo has a lot of feelings of like, well, what, like, am I human? Like, am I supposed to be human? Like, what is gender? Like, how do I fit into this world that like seems kind of binary? It's very scary and unusual. And so it's about, it's a lot of like breaking cycles of abuse and like friendship and just learning how to navigate a world that you feel you don't really belong in, and kind of finding belonging like through community and through friendship and yeah, all that good stuff. And there's mermaids and flying cats and all kinds of amazing, classical fantasy things.
I love how fantasy allows us to talk about life, experience life, and also critique it at the same time and make it this really inviting and engaging way of doing so.
Yeah, yeah, it's just been always my draw is fantasy. And I think that's why, is because we can reflect on the world and talk about it and, things we've been through, and kind of process it through these fantastical means. Or, we can even put ourselves in that position and, instead of suffering like we do in real life, we can make it, something magical and something exuberant and beautiful. Yeah, and I'm very excited. It is going to be very long. It's going to be very flowery, very colorful. And yeah, I absolutely can't wait.
Looking forward to it. So that's Gutless. And I know that you have a website where people can also see your artwork. We'll make sure to link that in the description of the podcast.
Great. Yeah, I have
Rose,
my website. It's rosemakesart.com. But all of my like more recent like updates and things like that, I post a lot of sketches to do with Gutless and like development on my Instagram and my Twitter, which is they're both just my name, Rose Bousamra. Yeah,
right.
check it out.
We will link to you there. So anything, I think that was all the questions on the official list, but anything that you want to add and make sure you say before the end of the episode. Anything I've missed.
No, just all the artists out there, just keep going, keep trying to find your voice, trying to find your story, make weird stuff. That's always my best advice. Make stuff you don't think anyone will like.
No,
I love it. Just that's when I really started to break free and realize that I had a voice. When I realized it didn't have to be perfect, it didn't have to be telling nice, happy ending stories all the time. Like you can be very real and honest. And I think that's what people like to read the most.
absolutely. If we
So
waited for perfect stories, would we ever have any?
yeah. No, absolutely not. You can never wait till you're ready, because you never will be. But you'll still make something amazing, I promise. And thank you so much, Jason. This has been
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. Glad to share about your work. And again, talking with Rose Bousamra and amazing things. Frizzy is well worth checking out. Um, Rose, give me the website one more time. I'm sorry.
rosemakesart.com.
Rosemakesart.com, and Gutless is also on the way. Powerful stories and wonderful work. So thanks again.
Thank you.